Alright, so I just finished editing this and I realized that the 808s are way too high in the song. That was my mistake and I apologize, but I am not going to do all of that again. So I'm just going to put this in here in the beginning. I'm sorry, but deal with it. Hey guys, what's up? Today I made a beat for Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon by Pop Smoke. This is another posthumous album, which made it a lot more popular than it would have been if he was still alive. I mean, seriously, who knew about Pop Smoke before he died? The first thing I did was I looked around YouTube for a sample. Here's one that'll work. I dragged it into FL Studio and got... The first thing I actually did was I pulled up this piano from X-Band and laid out this melody. Then I added an EQ to get rid of a lot of the low end and make it sound more perfect. I added a limiter because it was being a little bit too loud in some parts. I added a sound goodizer, which just makes it sound good. It makes it sound more full. And I added a reverb, not for the actual reverb, but just to make it sound softer. And lastly, I added halftime and put it about halfway on the band so that it would just sound a lot darker. And this is what that sounds like now. Eventually, I exported the melody and added a fruity delay to it, which basically just makes it echo. Then I duplicated it to where I have two now. I let one stay the exact same, but then one I pitched it down a lot to where it's of a lower frequency. Alright, now I'll show you the drums. When you're making drill music, there's a lot of things you have to take into mind. On most hip-hop beats, you'd have your snare like this on the 3 of every bar. But in drill music, you want to move the second 3 to the 4, to where every other is on the 4 instead of the 3. Then, when you're making a hi-hat pattern, instead of doing every 2-step like this, you would in most songs, you're going to want to do a triplet kind of dotted 8th note to where it sounds like this. And that kind of gives it more of the bounce. So for my song, what I did was I did that same pattern with the dotted 8th note, but then I added in an extra hi-hat every now and then. But then what I did is, instead of just putting notes, I have these D notes with a really low velocity, and then I have C notes, which are slide notes, so it kind of slides down instead of just playing one. Then for my kick pattern, one thing when you're doing drill music for your kick patterns, I notice a lot of drill songs have a kick on the beginning of every phrase, but then not a lot afterward. Like, you have like a little empty space, and then toward the end of the phrase, you have a lot of action. So this is what mine sounds like. And now for the 808 of this song. I have two patterns, so I'll play both of them for you. And here is the second pattern. I'll go ahead and go through both these patterns and show you what I did. For this pattern, I kept it kind of simple in the beginning with just notes and one slide note. Slide notes basically slide it to where it is from the bottom note. So here it slides from a G4 to a G5. Because if I had a G note right here that wasn't a slide, it would sound like this. But it's slide, so that means that it kind of like slides into place. And over here, I just have a lot of slide notes that go in an arpeggio. For the second pattern, it's a little different. The beginning is pretty bare bones, with not even a slide note. But then right here is where it gets crazy. I have this note, which is a slide note, but it's the same note. It's the same key, so it just kind of slides from almost no velocity to a high velocity. So it like fades in. And then over here I have pretty much the same thing as this, but just in a different pattern. Another thing I have for these crazy parts is I kind of pan it to left and right in your ears. Right here, in the control pan for the notes, I pan all the slide notes. Another thing I did for these 808 patterns is I have this camel crusher automated on for a lot of the more crazy parts. It's a free plugin, you should go check it out. Now I'll go through all the mixer tracks for all the drums. On my 808 I have the classic drive from Isotope Trash, which basically just like overdrives it and makes it a lot more punchy and distorted. Sausage Fattener, which pretty much does the exact same thing. This is weird. I have Ozone 8 Elements to image it to where it's wider, because without it, it's kind of thin in your ears. And I noticed that a lot of drill songs have it to where it's like wider in your ears. I have an EQ just to boost the lows a tiny bit, a bass boost, a bass boost, which boosts the lows, and then a limiter just to keep it from peaking, because it peaks a lot. Then for the snare, all I have on it is an EQ to get rid of some of the low end, and a reverb to make it a bit softer and also just give it a tiny bit of reverb. Then on my hi-hats, I have an EQ, again, just to EQ it a little bit, a limiter, and a stereo shaper. What this thing does is it kind of puts it to where it's not in the middle, it kind of plays two hi-hats, one in your left ear and one in your right ear, to where it sounds more full and wide. Then on my kick, I have nothing. I just turn it down a little bit. And then, last thing, right before the drop, I have this box. So, I think that's everything. Please like, subscribe, comment any feedback you have, or any requests you have for the next album for me to do.